And as we approach the door, I hear the word naked. I'm like, it's just not.
That's right, I saw it first.
It's not registering, but you had seen through the plate glass window. And then he opened the door, and I was presented with a stark naked man. There was one night that Representative Pezzo and myself returned to the Legislative Lounge, and a senator who will remain nameless wanted to see if we had IDs. We're like,
oh, my God.
You're like, yep.
I know you don't want to name that senator, but I've written 3 names down on this slip of paper. I'm going to slide to you. Hello, Vermont. I'm Andy Julo.
And I'm Joanna Grossman.
And this is There's No A in Creamy.
Vermont Politics, Culture, and Beyond.
Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to There's No A in Creamy, episode 12, the one where Joanna goes on vacation. But don't worry, you don't have to listen to me for 40 minutes straight, because if I've learned anything over the last year, you're never really free and clear of Joanna Grossman. She'll find us, and she is going to be a part of this episode at one point. And secondly, we have a guest host here today. That is Representative Doug Bishop from Chittenden 19. Welcome, Doug.
Chittenden 20.
That is Representative Doug Bishop from Chittenden 20.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Where is Chittenden 20? For those who don't know, which apparently includes me.
So, sure. Colchester has 4 state representatives, and we are divided into 2 districts. So basically anything east of 89 or on the north side of Mallett's Bay is Colchester's Chittenden 20 district, and it's Gail Pezzo and myself are the 2 freshman reps.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you quite well, but
yeah. Well, so let's get this out there. I'm a New Jersey native. We'll probably at some point perhaps turn to the conversation about what makes a real Vermonter. But I first came here to go to UVM, not like a lot of folks from around the Northeast. And that was 40, coming up on 41 years ago. Came to UVM, and it's really been home since then. It's where I met my wife, first night freshman year. So the die was cast after that.
First night of college you met her?
Very first night of college.
Was it like an orientation event? Or?
No, just I met someone that day that she knew from high school, and we were all out together that night. And wow. And within a couple of weeks we were dating. So nice. Yeah. So that, as I say, the die was cast. She's from Vermont. She grew up here. And so that was the start. After graduation, we both were in Washington, D.C. area. And that was kind of the next chapter in our life. And I was on Senator Leahy's staff, his Washington staff, for about 5.5 years or so.
That was your first job out of college?
That was my first job. And, we often talk about small world experiences. I walked in to drop a resume, otherwise kind of cold. And behind the desk was Fred Kenny, who you know from the Regional Planning Commission world. More recently, but Fred was working the desk in Leahy's office, and he had taken a couple classes with my wife, Beth. And so I didn't know Fred was there. He didn't know I'd be walking in, but it was fortuitous for me. He introduced me to the office manager, and a couple months later, I was actually working at the desk where Fred was. I took his job working the front desk.
Wow. He was my predecessor as the president of the RDCs of Vermont, and he knows everything, and he's always willing to take you under his wing and show you the way.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's always been like that.
He always has. He did me a big favor by introducing me to Clara in the office that day and sort of set the next path for me. So I really enjoyed working in Leahy's office. The front desk experience is a unique one. You learn a lot about Vermont quickly when you're answering phones all day, talking to Vermonters, welcoming people in the office who are connecting with the senator or staff. And despite having been at UVM for 4 years, I needed that education at the front desk to learn more about Vermont.
So if somebody had a problem with a policy, you were the guy they got on the phone?
I was always the first line. Sometimes they'd be referred to staff, but on a hot topic issue, they were calling and leaving messages with me. So I was talking. I learned telephone numbers and zip codes all across Vermont. I was going to say,
are there people who call every day?
Oh yeah. And it picks up speed when there's hot topics.
Sure.
So that was a good experience. I got to learn a little bit more about Vermont history. I had a couple of, I'll call them funny at this point, experiences. One was someone called, wanted to talk to the press secretary, and I was asking, well, may I tell him who's calling? And he said, Tom Salmon. And I said, well, and Joe will know what you're calling in regards to. A little chuckle from former Governor Tom Salmon, and I got him through to Joe. But being a native from New Jersey and Tom Salmon having served probably 15 years earlier in the role of governor, I was not yet in my wheelhouse of knowledge about Vermont. So it was a good opportunity to learn a lot. And then most of the time I worked in Leahy's office. I worked with the press secretary. I'll say inauspicious is probably overstating it, but my very first day in the office answering the phones, someone called and asked for Ellen, just by first name. Ellen was the chief of staff, and I had only been there a couple hours, but I knew you didn't just get connected with the chief of staff. So, well, may I tell her who's calling? And the caller enunciated very clearly, Patrick Leahy. So even getting used to
maybe
this,
it was Phil Hoff this time, right?
even getting used to the senator's voice on the phone may have taken me a day or two, but I didn't make that mistake again.
And how long were you in Washington?
So yeah, after about 6 years connected overall with Senator Leahy, I went to law school, stayed down in D.C. and went to law school for 3 years. At that point, my wife was teaching in Northern Virginia and had the summers off. So I took summer jobs in the legal field back in Vermont as part of our plan that as soon as I graduated, we would move back home. And at that point, I was certainly considered it home for myself to be connected with and come back to Vermont. And as I say, sometimes it's when we came back and started the next phase or our adult phase of life, the trying to purchase a home, start a family, all of those things. And it's something that I reflect on now because that's harder. It's a lot harder now for a 30-year-old couple to start a family and buy that first home. So that was the return. And I did practice law for about 12 years here in Vermont, and then made a decision to change focus after I had done some volunteering in nonprofits and worked with some boards and the like, that I went and worked in nonprofits for 15 years, 5 or so at the Red Cross and close to, 9 plus at the YMCA, the Greater Burlington YMCA in Burlington. So that was my professional experience before deciding to take that leap and run for office a little more than a year ago.
And how long had that idea of running for office been percolating?
Well, it's funny. I had not given it serious thought. Yeah. I want to be truthful, so I will say that the thought occasionally crossed my mind that it would be interesting work to be engaged in the legislature. And when I was practicing law and my time at those 2 nonprofits, I had spent a little bit of time around the State House. And so I was not unfamiliar with the work done there and how some of it was done. But I had not given it serious thought. And it was fortuitous that in the spring of 24, I kind of decided that I thought, after 9 years, my time at the Y, I was ready to move on and try something new and figure I would work till about the summer and then figure out what was next. And a week after I made that personal decision, our outgoing rep, Kurt Taylor, who is a neighbor of mine as well in Colchester, came up. We had a conversation. And he said, I'm going to be stepping down, and I think you should consider running. So the pieces kind of fell into place for me, and I made that decision. And, well, you and I will touch on campaigning. That was an interesting experience. But, yeah, it's just circumstances that if I had not mentally made that choice that I was going to move on from my job, I don't think I could have balanced the full-time job or taking a leave, which is a challenge for Vermont legislators to figure out how to balance work and doing that legislative service. A citizen legislature, as we often refer to it as, is a real apt description. Yeah,
and campaigning itself is a job for a while. That doesn't pay.
No, it does not. And I felt that I had been connected on a number of issues that impacted the state and in some conversations, but I had not done a lot hyper-local, if you will, in Colchester. I had not come up through the school board service or select board service. So I felt that I had a lot of work to do and owed that work to the voters to knock a lot of doors and attend a lot of meetings.
Sure.
And so, it was my full-time job from, summer through the fall, through Election Day.
And we met, I think it was July 4th parade, right? The Colchester parade. Is that the first time we had?
Yeah, I think, that would have been, which is...
It's kind of the unofficial kickoff of the general election season.
Absolutely. It crosses my mind. My wife, who has been externally supportive in everything I've done in my life, including running for office, made clear where her boundaries were on the campaigning. Parades were in. Door knocking was out. So she
drove the car though to bring you to the door, though, didn't she?
Oh yeah. She helped drive me to doors, but she was all about the parade last year and this year, decorating the float, having fun, waving. She'll do honking waves, but she leaves the actual door knocking to me as the candidate.
And we got to do some door knocking together. We had some adventures out there.
Oh, right out of the gate.
You know, I would say, and I knocked on a lot of doors, and it was mostly just uneventful. It was nice.
Sure.
But there were a few times, there was some high drama, and every time you were right there with me. Every other interaction was, sometimes they were negative, positive, but they were all civil. Like, people will talk to you.
Yeah, we got to get into it, Andy.
We do.
That first door.
I am hoping this is your weirdest door knocking experience, because if you went weirder after that, I'd like to hear that story instead.
I did not. This was it.
First door we knocked on. It was first door I knocked on. And we went together.
I was still in the early phases of the door knocking. You and I, we had parked our cars. We were up on the north side of Colchester. And as we're walking to the door, I think I'm saying to you, so you got a sense as to what we want to do? Or are we just introducing ourselves? We're like, we'll play it by ear.
Yeah.
And as we approach the door, I hear the word naked. I'm like, it's just not.
That's right, I saw it first.
It's not registering. But you had seen through the plate glass window at the front of this individual's home that, and then he opened the door, and I was presented with a stark naked man, and we moved quickly through our spiel.
It's a wonder we managed to get the spiel out. Yeah,
he was unfazed. He was
It was an everyday occurrence for him. You could tell
every day.
Yeah,
happily naked. We introduced ourselves, left our literature, and pretty much moved on.
So it started with that, and then we ended with somebody who just unloaded on us about everything the Democrats had done since Stephen Douglas's days in the 1860s, I think.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with us. So it was fine. She just had some things that she needed to let out, and it was not personal. And
she did. It was tough after, we had been out there for a while that evening knocking doors. So it was a tough finish, and it was literally, as you're out door knocking, you're like, how many more do I do? All right, can I do 5 more?
Yes.
And it was getting towards dusk, and you don't want to really knock on people's door after dark. It's not comfortable for them and the like. So this was, all right, let's do one more.
Yep.
And she gave us a piece of her mind. In retrospect, to try to take, what am I going to take from that? Right. And it was the passion. Whether we were personally responsible, we knew we had not implemented things that she was concerned about. We didn't even necessarily agree with all of the direction that she was upset about. But we got the message. She was unsettled. That was me trying to put the best on what was otherwise an uncomfortable finish to a day that started off oddly enough.
Well done. Yeah, the end was in reach, and we spent a long time there, watched the sun go down.
Yeah.
The crickets started chirping.
The mosquitoes were coming out.
Yeah. We were up to about the Howard Dean era at that point.
So we had that. And, it was what I also found. I'll turn to, and I hate to say any experience was negative, but that was uncomfortable in the moment. But I think what I really found positive, the most positive conversations I had were not the people who loved you from the moment you knocked on the door because you're a party affiliation, but it was the ones who were open to the conversation. And you got the sense they started off, I don't know about this guy.
Right.
He's a Democrat. That's not generally where I go. But they were open for it. They asked the questions. They were respectful in listening. And if I felt I could leave an impression that they found me to be thoughtful and reasonable, maybe I was going to get their vote, maybe not. But, they had given me a fair shot, and I took the best opportunity I could to convey who I was.
Yeah.
Because I think the reality is when you're running for office, it's hard to commit or state a policy position on a particular issue for a number of reasons. One, you're not as well versed in it as you're going to be when you're in the heat of a legislative session. Two, we don't know from session to session everything that's going to come up. We had a sense of some of the things we were going to be addressing in this last legislative session. But that's why I think for voters to get a chance to meet you and size you up generally as to what your approach may be. And philosophically, is this candidate thoughtful? Are they rash? That's where it's helpful knocking those doors.
Yeah. You have to really push through the politeness real fast because everybody's instinct is to be nice to the person who's standing you face to face.
Yeah.
And you really have to find a way to draw them out and say, it's okay. Let's talk about the uncomfortable. And I found, the most value came not from what I said to them, but what I let them say to me that they might not have said if I wasn't more open to that conversation.
Yeah. You've got to invite it. There's, I think, being a candidate and serving as a legislator representing others, you've got to have a certain level of comfort with being vulnerable to people either putting you on the spot or opening up personally about themselves.
That brings us to our hot topping of the week, and we are fortunate to have our co-host, Doug Bishop, here. He's going to talk to us about what it's like to be a first-year legislator, to be plucked out of society and thrown under the Golden Dome. But we also have on the line Joanna Grossman calling in.
I remember her. Didn't she used to host the show before?
The former host.
Yeah, before I came in.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
And she's calling from the beaches of Delaware.
That's right.
We're recording on July 24th, which is a special day. It's Joanna's birthday.
Right.
And she's spending it in a closet, hiding from the beach, talking to us.
Yeah.
That's commitment.
Yeah.
I think she wants her job back. I guess I'm just holding
I think she's worried.
Yeah.
I don't want Doug to get too comfortable in the booth.
Well, you have a guest host lined up, TBA, for when I go out of town, and I'm a little concerned already, so I understand.
Yeah, no, we can. It's Elaine Haney is going to be joining us as my guest co-host. Doug's not a co-host; he's a guest host.
How's the weather down there, Joanna?
It's really hot, and so the only thing to do here is you can either try to stalk Joe Biden or you can go to the beach. And
we know which one Joanna's doing.
Yeah, well, you know what? Real talk. I was here last year when Biden dropped out, and I was just like, "Yeah, guys, you're welcome. You're welcome." But yeah, so we've been down at the beach, and the first day I got what is technically categorized as a severe jellyfish sting.
Ooh, rough start.
It was a rough start, but mostly you've just been chilling out and goofing around. It's been pretty fun.
Have you gone back in the ocean?
No. I have looked at it, and I would my feet have been in it, and I've been on the sand.
Okay.
And a lot of the family, I think, are hoping I will go back in.
Right.
But then they'll be like, yeah, I've only seen a few jellyfish. And it's funny because I always thought jellyfish were really pretty before this. And now I find when I'm walking around the boardwalk and I see little jellyfish toys or things with a jellyfish motif, I find myself tightening up. I'm not ready.
You've got to get back on the horse. You got to get in the ocean.
Yeah, I guess so.
You can't carry this with you for a year.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a little triggering. You got to get past it.
It's all right. I'll jump in tomorrow, I promise. But it's been fun. It's been fun to see everyone. And fresh off my Amazon victory, a little update for the listeners that we won against Amazon on Thursday. And that was fun.
It kind of seemed like it was just going to kind of plod along for a few more weeks and then sudden upset victory.
Kind of like the opposite of the end of the legislative session, where we thought we might wrap up, but we plodded along for a couple more weeks.
I wasn't paying attention. I don't know.
It was it's just not every day or every person that you get to be I beat the oligarchy. I'm feeling pretty good about that. I got to say, on the way down, I was I'm going to be insufferable next week. I have beat the oligarchy and it's my birthday. So have we properly framed what we're talking about here?
Oh, not at all. So our real topic for the hot topping section is talking about the experience of being a first-time legislator. We covered in the opening segment the campaign and the decision to run in your background. But then you get elected. You go to the most miserable party on earth.
No, I don't want to say that. But election night was not all joy for all Democrats. But yeah. But that was, it's another start.
So you're elected, and Then what happens? Your phone starts ringing. Everybody reaches out to you. What happens as a newly elected legislator?
Oh, well, it's a lot of fun. The friends, the family that have been so supportive. You're getting lots of nice feedback and appreciation from them. So that's a lot of fun. And then the next day, you're figuring out, okay, now I've responded to how many places, phone calls am I meeting, how many places am I going? And you feel like the campaign continues because, as we touched on earlier, you don't know what committee assignment you're going to have. So you kind of take all comers with respect to meetings. You can get yourself up to speed. That's everything from the timber manufacturers to the farmers to every state agency wants to have an introductory call with new legislators writ large, not just me personally. So I'm learning everything I can about all the different state agencies, and it's the start of legislative graduate school, as I've heard someone refer to it as. And that first session, you're really just and the oft used, you're just drinking out of a fire hose. The volume of information is coming hot and heavy, but that's good. I mean, I think if you want to be in the legislature, you've got to be someone who's interested. And I'm also finding a lot of interesting people in the legislature. But you're naturally interested, but the volume is really something.
So when was your first orientation or your first event?
Yeah, it's really great. The legislature teams up with the Snelling Center. Yep. And in mid-November, I think it was, we were down for 3 days in Montpelier. They have you hold the dates aside as a candidate.
Right.
And then you are 2 nights, 3 days, and it's all in. They just start going at it. You're getting introduced to a lot of folks. You're finding out about this legislative council and joint fiscal office, really finding out who's the heartbeat of the building with respect to keeping the conversation moving. And they were then at that meeting and since just an incredible asset. And if you've touched on it in an earlier episode, but Legislative Council, I'd like to say, are the words, and the JFO or the finances, Joint Fiscal Office is the finances and the numbers. And they really help every committee, every legislator formulate what we're working on. They bring incredible institutional knowledge, and they are nonpartisan. And I have found them to be really assiduously rule followers on being the nonpartisan. They're just there for advice and support, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think one of the things I found is there's a permanency around the state capitol, and there's people there who are there every day. And then the legislators are there for, 5-6 months out of the year, and you're a part-time legislator. You don't have a staff, and you really have to depend on these folks. And you're right, they're so helpful. They want to see you succeed. Yeah,
they've got that institutional knowledge for, we've got one principal, but really 2 folks who supported our House Human Services Committee that I sat on. They've both been in the State House in Legislative Council for 15 years. So they know history. They know what's been written before, what's been drafted, what's the status of things. So they're incredibly helpful. And so they were a key part of that orientation we had in November. You learn something about House rules and how things are going to proceed on the House floor, which, of course, you absorb a percentage of it, but you really have to live it to fully understand how the procedures work. You are in contact with the clerk's office. We have an amazing House clerk, Betsy Ann Rask, and others. So you're just as importantly, you're bonding and meeting other legislators.
Right.
You're all there. Republican, Democrat, Progressive, Independent, all the new legislators are there. And that's just also as valuable, if not more valuable, is to make some connections before you arrive.
Sure. Were there legislators who had been there a while that reached out and let you know immediately that, hey, you can come to me if you have a question, or I can help with this? Or...
Yeah, starting immediately. Yeah. As we are asked to share some preferences for committee assignments, ultimately the speaker and others sit down and sort of have all of the moving parts of committees and the new members, et cetera, and put together the rosters for committee membership. But in trying to decide where I might want to express my interest, I reached out to some folks who I met for coffee, spoke to on the phone, learned a little bit more about the various committees, the work they're doing. And from that moment and through the very end of the session and continuing, I have found the other legislators who are the more veteran legislators extraordinarily welcoming and helpful. And that is invaluable to a freshman who arrives. And they've got that institutional knowledge. They're going to help break it down for you. They'll spend the time you need. And I really valued that and appreciated that.
Sure. Did you arrive thinking, here are some issues that I really want to have an impact on, or did you come in with a freshman sense of, I need to have my ears wide open and really observe what's going on here before we settle into something that I want to champion?
Sure. I would say largely the latter, just kind of wide open to learn. And in part, as I said, you get your committee assignment when you arrive. So there's a certain area that you can be more influential once you get a committee assignment. On House Human Services, my ability to dictate or chime in on what happens in commerce is not nothing, but it's certainly more limited than what I can do and how I can impact the work of House Human Services. All of that said, I campaigned on certain issues. I gained a lot from the conversations, knocking doors, as we've talked about, affordability, particularly property taxes, education reform. Mental health for me was an issue that I wanted to keep my ears and eyes open to once I arrived and see what was happening in the building. So I went in with a few ideas, but I think are best served by trying to be generally open in that first term.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a quick question.
I'll allow
So I'm just curious, like a little follow up to that. Like this is more political, I guess, but I love hearing about like how, the caucus supports each other. And I was sort of curious, did you also hear from members of the other chamber? Because I've had many legislators say to me, oh, the enemy isn't the other party, the enemy is the other chamber, and they're not even kidding. And I'm not, I like to believe we can overcome that.
Well, no, I'll object to the framing of the question. My legal background with the the enemy, but no, the House and the Senate are fairly uniquely operating bodies, more so than I might have thought, and so it really was me reaching out to and being reached out from members within the House, and most more specifically, the House Democrats, because those are the folks I'm caucusing with, and the like. But yeah, it's fairly bifurcated down there under the Golden Dome. That changes, it waxes and wanes at different times during the session. But for an incoming member, you're pretty uniquely focused on working with the folks within your chamber.
You had a interaction with a senator in the lounge? Late one.
I had a few experiences of being a newbie in the building, if you will. There was one night that Representative Pezzo and myself returned to the Legislative Lounge because we were downtown. We needed a good internet connection to be on a call back in the district, and we were in the Legislative Lounge in the building after dark. And a senator who will remain nameless came in basically asking us, do you belong here? Wanted to see if we had IDs. Like,
oh my God.
You're like, yep.
Rude.
Like,
so yep, I know you don't want to name that senator, but I've written 3 names down on this slip of paper. I'm going to slide to you. Tell me if I hit it.
No.
No, I didn't. Okay.
No, you didn't. You didn't. Not that guesses.
Okay.
No.
Continue.
Yeah. So other experiences. I remember once coming out of the House chamber, hot and heavy to get to the next thing I needed to go to. I needed to go up to my committee room. I come out of the chamber, race up the set of stairs, and realize I've just raced up a set of stairs. It's only getting me to the House balcony. It's not going to get me anywhere.
Yeah.
Another time I went up a set of stairs in the building, and I was not totally unfamiliar with the State House. I had been there a handful of times over the years for various things. Went up another staircase and had 3 or 4 people looking at me as I started to ascend the stairs. They're at the bottom, and I turn around. I'm like, yeah, this isn't going anywhere, is it? They're like, nope. Yeah, so I had those experiences. There's also the fun experience of, on your first day, selecting your seat. There's a lot of talk about.
You get to do that?
Yeah, well,
a little bit.
We'll get to that.
Okay, all right.
You get to select your seat, and so I spent a little time looking at the seating chart from the prior session, knowing some people may move, what seats may be open because people didn't return. But I had a couple thoughts of where on the House floor it might be fun to sit. And then shortly before we're all sent out to the lobby, all of us freshmen were like, yeah, we've got some seat assignments for you. So when you walk in, we'll let you know where you're sitting.
Oh.
So less ceremonious than we thought of the selection process, but that's fine. Being anywhere in the body is a nice place to be. So, and we we started our first day electing a lieutenant governor. You know,
Right.
we threw out all the votes that all of us as Vermonters had cast on November 5th, and 180 of us between the House and the Senate decided who would be the next lieutenant governor. For those who don't remember, for Vermont, the governor, lieutenant governor, and treasurer must win at least 50% of the vote, and if not, the legislature decides. So there we are, first day electing a lieutenant governor. You know, those things in addition to just learning the ropes, learning your committee, all of that. So yeah, it's off to the races for sure.
Yeah. There was a great 7 days piece that followed Representative Sean Sweeney throughout the legislative session.
Yeah, that's great.
And one of the things he mentioned, and I specifically remember thinking this myself, is I want to feel good about every vote that I cast, which sounds really doable when you first start. But I feel like the less you know about a bill, the more you can vote on it with good conscience. Like as you dig in, there are winners and losers in every bill, and everybody's got a story and everybody's got a circumstance. Did you run into that? How did you feel about the bills that you voted on, and how did you weigh some of these?
Well, I think this circles back to the point I was making about how helpful people are in the building and some of the more veteran legislators, because when you do start to dive into an issue, and you know, just numerically, most of these are going to be bills that went through committees that are not your own. So you've got a learning curve, right?
Yeah.
You know, I perhaps could have told you that TIF was tax increment financing, but then comes along TIF's little brother, CHIP, that we dealt with this session.
Mini TIF, right?
And, mini TIF. So that presented a learning curve for someone who had not been working in that area, but this was a big vote. This was an integral part of the housing efforts that we were undertaking. So I found it very helpful to learn. But you're right. The more you learn, like, oh, that's a good argument. And then you talk to someone, oh, that's a good argument. But you turn to the people who are in the know. You turn to people whose opinion you respect, that you've gotten to respect and learn. Even in the short time you're there, you know folks who are really standouts in certain area, or have some similar or different thinking from yourself. I think it's helpful to turn to people, during and we don't have time to dive into the education discussion, but I reached out to people who I thought would be voting a different way from me as we led up to that education vote, just so I was getting the most out of trying to learn and inform my vote, because in the end, you do have to defend it and be willing and able to share with folks why you voted a certain way. I think in the end, I did not feel uncomfortable with any of my votes during the session. There was times where I was pressing my party leadership for more information about a bill and, why are we going this way, and trying again in that learning process. There was one bill where I voted against the direction of the caucus, and I felt comfortable with that. And I took our leadership at their word, as they wanted to, number one, not be surprised. So anytime I was on the fence, or in that the one instance, clearly I was going in a different direction, I kept them in the loop and tried to keep them to their word. That most important to them was to just not be surprised.
Right.
They did their work to try to persuade, and that's part of their job. And I think we accept that.
Yeah. There's that balance of party conscious constituents.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was part of a conversation I had with the speaker last spring when I was looking to run, and heard what many people hear is the conscience first, constituent second, and caucus third. And I was going to internalize that and make that sort of my mantra throughout the session.
Doug, you've worked in. Sorry, I'm going to jump in here, Andy. I know that, like me, you've worked in other legislative bodies, or you've been, involved with them. And I got my start in the New York State Legislature. And I've always been, like, when I first came to Vermont and got to know the Vermont State House, I was like, what do you mean you don't have district offices and legislative staff and, offices in the State House? And, I was just really surprised at how under-resourced Vermont is. And I know we have this kind of brand as a citizen legislature, but what I've seen is that leads to, well, I guess I'm curious about your thoughts about this. My observation is that it's led to a unique relationship between the legislators and lobbyists of different flavors. And I'm not saying just like white hat lobbyists, I'm saying like advocacy groups and, subject matter experts that are not on the state staff of any kind. They're not electeds. And I'm sort of curious how you felt, how you navigated that relationship, and if you felt like compared to other legislative bodies, it was too much or it was appropriate or it's what we have.
I think it falls into it's the what we have, and it's up to you as a legislator to factor that in. And it's part of what you're learning. You always have to know the source. So if you know someone's a lobbyist for X industry and they're either approaching you or you may approach them just to get some information, you've got a filter that you put it through. Just as if I'm asking certain members of the legislative body who fellow legislators who have a strong opinion one way or the other. So, I also, my first experiences with the State House, I had a few before arriving there as a rep. And I think some of the things that come about because we are a small state and small, tight building and all, make it approachable. Very much the people's house. When I was practicing law, there was a workers' compensation provision that was being considered, changes to statute, and I knew the insurance carriers were down lobbying, and I was representing a lot of people who had work injuries. I simply called the relevant committee and said, hey, I'm an attorney representing injured workers. I think there's a voice that you're not hearing, and I've got a few things to share. And they're like, great, next Tuesday, 1:00, we've got a hearing, you're on. And I'm like, okay. That it was kind of that easy that a voice could be introduced to the conversation. I was not a total person out of left field. I was someone practicing in that area and had some legal experience, but I was not a familiar person in that State House before I made that call, and you were able to do that. And then when I was in the nonprofit arena working at the Red Cross and again at the YMCA, there were certain issues that were relevant to us, so I played that advocate, whether I was officially a lobbyist or not, you're advocating. And so I've been on that side of it and know what that's like to a degree of trying to ensure your voice is heard down there. So it's just a matter of putting it in context of all the information you get.
How about we close with some of your highlights from your first session?
Oh, boy. Highlights. This is reminiscent of people asking you, like, do you like it? How do you like being a legislator? And it's, in a sense, a funny thing to say you like because it's very consequential. You're making decisions that are impacting the lives of your fellow Vermonters, and you don't know that you're always getting it right. You're doing your best. You're making the most informed decision you can. So I do like it. I think you've got to be someone who wants to be intellectually stimulated constantly. There's very little break from it, but learning. So you got to be interested in learning, and I am. So I find that environment enjoyable to be in. The highlights, boy, hard to categorize them as highlights in the same way that it's hard to say that you like the work because it is challenging. I think there was some realities. H91, a bill that was trying to reimagine how we address homelessness, supporting the homeless here in Vermont, was something that went through the committee I'm a member of. We worked extraordinarily hard and at great length, and we thought with members of the administration to get where we were doing something better for Vermont, and ultimately the governor vetoed that legislation. And so that was disappointing, to say the least, and something that we will be returning to. So that's highlight, not necessarily in the positive way, but was impactful, if you will, during my tenure in the first year in the body. And being there for some of those other conversations, the education, again, was sort of a monumental thing that we started, as your guests have pointed out. This is the start of a process with a lot more work to do. But being there for that was also very impactful.
Yeah, I got to visit about every 2 weeks with the regional development corporations, and it can be a long session, and it can really wear on people. And I think I saw you early on, and you said you hoped you never lost appreciation for coming to work every day underneath the Golden Dome, and you kept it up the whole session. You were
I appreciate
your
that.
energy level was very high, and you poured a lot into it, and you clearly see it as an opportunity to serve.
Yeah, I really did like it. It is not always easy. I'll share a story. When we lived in the Washington, D.C. area, and we were connected with a lot of folks around Washington, I remember one of our neighbors telling a story once, and is this urban legend or not, who knows? But if you're ever near Andrews Air Force Base and you see 5 helicopters taking off at the same time, something bad is happening. It's like basically the start of the evacuation of the seat of government from Washington. Again, I'm sure it's urban legend. But I remember one night talking to my wife. I was staying down in Montpelier, and it had been a particularly tough day. And I just said to her, I think it's 5 helicopter time. It's like, how are we going to get through this? The weight of the world,
Right.
all of these issues, none of it easy.
Yeah.
But you show up the next day and you figure out how to move forward.
All right, that's going to take us to our last licks section where the hosts ask cultural questions of each other. We don't really know what the premise of this section is.
You've been sticking to it, even if you think it's ill-defined. You've been faithful to it.
It's
so
still
I like
there.
I like it.
Yes, it's got potential, and we're not going to pull the plug on it yet.
I think it's great. I love it.
I think I get to ask you the first question.
Sure, fire away.
My mother is from New Jersey, and I understand the struggle. It's a place a lot of people have migrated from New Jersey up here to Vermont, either by choice or they missed that tricky intersection on the Turnpike Garden State and just ended up here
Before
and
you know it,
didn't
here you
want to navigate it in reverse. But it's a state that is a butt of a lot of jokes, but a place that I know my mother is very proud of, and people who come from New Jersey very proud of. Why don't you give us 5 reasons that we should thank the maker for New Jersey?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, I think we should all be faithful and honor bound to defend where we're from. So I will stand up. Stand up for New Jersey in that for that reason. The butt of jokes. I don't know that it's in fashion as it once was, but the armpit of the nation was a regular that I would hear. And if you're just driving up on the Turnpike near New York, I can kind of get it. But incredibly more diverse than people think with respect to the beauty of the state. I was north central Jersey, and you go from that point out west towards Delaware Water Gap. You've got some beautiful green hills that are not totally unlike parts of Vermont. Down south, the Pine Barrens are a beautiful area. I was a Boy Scout for 1 year, and it was not my favorite thing. I liked the camping aspect, but stuck with it to the end of the year because it was a big multi-day canoe trip through the Pine Barrens in the southern stretch of the state. Then we've got the Jersey Shore, and we call it the shore. Some people call it the beach or the ocean. Other states, but we go to the shore if you're from New Jersey. I don't know. I also have to be thankful for the deep friendships that I developed there. It's always going to be home in that respect. There is a core group of folks that I moved into what I consider my hometown when I was 5 years old, and I've known between kindergarten and 5th grade. If we weren't there, other folks moved in, and there's a group of 8 of us that are incredibly tight to this day. And I graduated high school a long time ago, so I'm thankful. I'm thankful for that. I'm not sure if that's 5, but
That's whatever. Approximately 5.
there's your rundown.
Yeah.
You know what I really like about Jersey, Doug, is that being a Queens girl, you live in New York and live in Jersey, but it's like once you get to Vermont, like Queens and Jersey, now we're on the same team. You know what I'm saying?
Us against the world. Is that what you're saying?
Totally. It's like whole tri-state area. Like we got to stick together.
Yeah. Oh, we'll stick together. But also, we've as some of your other guests have talked about in the relation similar vein, the what's a real Vermonter mean?
Yeah.
I think if you want it and you want to be here, you've made a choice to come here. I couldn't,
Yeah.
I couldn't control where I was born, but I have adopted Vermont for sure as my home. But now I get to turn the tables on you. Is that
You
right,
do.
Andy?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
So
I believe that is the premise.
I have formulated this question. So your experience, as I understand it, personally, is not unlike a number of folks who grew up in Vermont, similar to my wife's, who came up through high school and UVM. And then there was a time where she wanted to get away. And you left Vermont for a bit.
I did.
So what caused you to want to leave Vermont, and what are the things that brought you back?
Yeah, so I actually left twice, and part of it is that wandering instinct. Like, you
Yeah.
want to see what else is out there. I met my future wife in high school. And people hear that now, and they're like, "Oh, that's such a sweet story." And not so much. I mean, when you're young and you're in love, the world is out to get you. And I'm not sure. There's an author called William Shakespeare, and he wrote a play about this. And it's I don't want to give away any the plot,
please don't.
But everybody dies.
No spoilers.
It's like
Oh,
it's
my
400
God.
years old.
Right.
You haven't seen it by now. That's on you. So we found ourselves in a situation where we were, young, and so we had to make it as adults at 18 in Vermont, which I think is actually a really relevant experience for today, because I think probably trying to make it as an 18-year-old in the late 90s is probably like trying to make it as a 30-year-old today in Vermont. I mean, just
Yeah. The world just seems to have a deep end these days, by the way.
Yeah. And so we're a couple of nerds, so we went to the public library and pulled out all these reference books and started looking at cost of living indexes and universities and the programs that we wanted. And well, I mean, we found out if you go out west, the cost of living is much lower. And if you just hang around for a year, they'll give you in-state tuition status. And it was going to be less than 1/3 of the cost of UVM in-state to go in-state out in Montana.
Wow.
So we packed the car and went out to.
I don't care what Joanna says. You're a smart guy. Figuring that all out.
I think it was.
And the maturity level, I feel like at that age, of
absolutely.
doing the research blows
No.
my mind.
Yeah, I'm kind of
for real.
Benjamin buttoning on maturity. I'm getting less mature as I get older. Probably a Lotus Notes spreadsheet in there at some point as well.
Excellent.
But yeah, we went out there, and we didn't really want to leave Vermont. That's just kind of where the economics of it was. So we went out there, we got our degree, and I thought, okay, well, surely now that I have a bachelor's degree in my pocket, this Vermont thing's going to be a piece of cake. So we went home and started looking for a job and started looking for a place to live. And the offers I was getting compared to what it was going to cost to houses it was not competitive. We had a baby at that point. So my wife was, it was just going to be a single earner household. And so the first real good offer that again matched the nerdy, we were able to go on the internet at this point and look up cost of living and price of rental and all that stuff. Was Philadelphia. So I went and worked for the Park Service in Philadelphia and was able to afford housing down there, make a living. We spent 3 years down there. But, once our oldest reached near kindergarten age, we had a pact that wherever we start the kids in school, we're staying. And so it was,
Gotcha.
it was permanent decision time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Vermont still made sense, even with 3 professional years of under my belt and a bachelor's degree. But we decided whatever it takes, we want to be here. And, it's interesting. I watch my classmates on social media, and they've gone to Boston and they've gone to New York, and they've done well for themselves financially. It's definitely a sacrifice to be here in Vermont, but one that we made the calculation at that time it would be worth it, and it has been.
Yeah. I mean, there are intangibles to living here that I think is a significant draw for folks to come to stay and to enjoy. I mean, that I come out of my neighborhood in Colchester and drive up over Water Tower Hill rather than simply going out the Roosevelt Highway, because as I go up and over Water Tower Hill, I get to see Mansfield and Camel's Hump, and just, again, similar to the State House, I always want to remind myself how fortunate I am and never forget to be here in Vermont is our good fortune.
Well, we got the idea for bringing you in as a co-host when you sent us hate mail.
No, I was just, okay.
Hate text.
Do I get to defend myself?
Yeah,
Or-
go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I was out and about doing something, and I stopped to get myself a creamy, and I ordered my creamy, and my order was not something that had been discussed previously on your program. And I started to wonder, and I sent to you guys.
We've only had a few episodes.
Yeah, I'm like, well, what kind of host are
We
you?
were in the booth when we got that too. That was the funniest part. We we got to a break and we were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Go ahead.
And my order is not for everyone, Joanna Grossman, because it sounds like you struggle enough just with a straight up creamy. But I like the small. I don't need. No one needs to order a large creamy in my book.
Howard Dean disagrees.
Yeah, well, okay. I guess he's accomplished in certain things. But I get a small vanilla dipped in chocolate, and then that chocolate hardens and encases it. And but this is really somewhat weather dependent. Sure. If it's too hot, it's just, even the best of us struggle to eat that without it leaking everywhere and getting all over you.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, no, I said, but
kiss
in
up.
the cool weather, some of us can handle it. Joanna Grossman. So no, I like that chocolate dip, but if the temperature is too high, and not everyone gets the recipe for the chocolate down right, and they don't always harden up and encase the vanilla in the way that it really needs to be. So it can be hit or miss. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to be on your show throwing shade at you guys, I don't understand any discussion of sprinkles with respect to creamies.
Right.
I'm just
Wow.
Well,
I'm throwing it down.
Wow. Okay, you're on Team Andy there.
Yeah, there's another one in my column. Which you can't really do sprinkles if you're doing the dipping, though.
Yeah,
I don't. Having worked at a creamy stand, I don't know. I'm not like a coordinated person. My creamies were really lopsided, but I don't understand how you dip it. Like if you turn that thing sideways, it's not like Dairy Queen ice cream holds up. You can turn it upside down and sideways because it's made of plastic and stuff like that. But
I've been to plenty of good Vermont creamy stands that serve legit creamy,
right?
And they manage it.
Just have to be skilled.
Yeah, gotta be skilled.
All right, well, that's what I was not then, I guess. We've also talked about on several of our last episodes about what it means to be a real Vermonter, and eventually we'll stop talking about it. But for now, you're here.
Well, I've been giving some thought to this, thinking, I know this comes up. I'm a faithful listener of the podcast, so
that's what we like to hear. That.
I think there's been a lot that's already been said, so I'm not going to cover old ground, but I'm going to add something. Then, if you don't mind, I'll tell a little story. But I'm going to add that you learn to enjoy the sweet smell of manure. Mm-hmm. If you're not, I was enjoying it as I drove up here through the islands to tape this today. If you're here, or if you've got someone visiting who's like, oh, what is that smell? And they've, got this disdain in their voice for manure, then Vermont may not be their place. So, you got to.
Doug, that is such a good one. No one's ever said that. And even in Burlington, that is a very real thing.
Yeah. And, prevailing winds can influence it. And, you got the school in the islands here, Grand Isle, that is
surrounded by it.
Right next to it. So they know what I'm talking about for sure.
Yeah.
But this question of, I touched earlier, the pride and pleasure of being able to serve in Vermont and having my mom visit the State House and introducing her. Well, my wife visited the State House as well during her school break. As I said, she teaches elementary school. And she spent a couple days with me in Montpelier and was up in the gallery. So I introduced her as my favorite constituent. But then I moved on to pointing out that she has said that I spoiled our son's bloodlines since I am not the native Vermonter. Born in New Jersey. My wife is a native Vermonter. Yep. And I then implored on the House floor that if anyone meets my wife that day, to let her know that since I had worked for a member of our federal delegation, I have completed the 251 Club, visiting every town in Vermont. And the good folks of Colchester had elected me to the august body of the House of Representatives, that I was starting to consider myself a real Vermonter, and to please share that with my wife. So to my point is, if you want it and you make this place your home, I think Vermont is your home. Says a guy who doesn't have six in the ground, and I've got to come up with something, right?
That's right. Well, Representative Doug Bishop, thank you for guest co-hosting with me today.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad for the opportunity, Joanna. I'm glad you've enjoyed some time away, but appreciative of the chance to come in here and chat with you and with Andy.
Thanks so much, Doug.
Yeah, of course. And hey, who doesn't want to be on a podcast that's got as a green room, a Zamboni is in the green room.
It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. So it's you guys do. You roll out the red carpet for your guests here.
You want to take it for a spin?
Oh, my wife does. She's
we could definitely we can get her on that.
Zambonis.
Yeah, the battery was disconnected when she was here, but we could get her back. It's all hooked up now.
All right.
That'd be good social.
Yes, it would, wouldn't it? I just don't send it to the insurance company.
Right.
Happy birthday, Joanna.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Joanna.
you.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you all for listening.
Follow us between episodes for the latest updates on our socials at There's No A in Creamy on Instagram, Substack, and Blue Sky.
And catch us on our next episode of There's No A in Creamy, Vermont Politics, Culture, and Beyond in Apple Podcasts and Spotify.